You're about to listen to the Dr. Dahlia Show. Sassy, stimulating talk radio. And now, here's Dr. Dahlia.
Doctor, tell me true. What's a heart like mine supposed to do? Doctor, will it be okay? You got the kind of stuff that makes my day. Doctor on the air, you got me rattled. Doctor on the air, yeah.
And we're back on the Dr. Dahlia Show, 1-877-DOC-DALI, 1-877-DOC-DALI. So you're going to see headlines saying that the Trump administration is ending the Medicare premium subsidy program. And everybody is all in a panic, but this is what I understand is happening. So there's been subsidy programs to help keep premiums stable for Medicare prescription drug plans. After 2026, the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services is going to end them. Why? Well, the agency said in its review of the 2027 bids, it showed insurers have gained enough experience, according to Reuters, with Medicare Part D to accurately price their plans without support from the program. So according to CMS Administrator Dr. Oz, he says, we are stabilizing the market so this bailout is no longer needed. Premiums will go up by less than $10 for most Medicare recipients, with many even seeing lower premiums. So as you know, Medicare Part D provides prescription drug coverage to millions of beneficiaries through private insurance plans. I'm kind of confused that Medicare just already doesn't cover it. You got Medicare Part A, then you got Part B, then you have Part D, and then there's a C or extension program that people can purchase. And I think that whole system is flawed. If you're going to cover an older senior's medical issues, then you got to cover both the doctor visits, the hospitals, and their medications. I think it's ridiculous. But major Medicare Part D insurers include your United Health Group, your Humana, your CVS Health. So there's these open enrollment periods that happen, I believe, October through December, for you to get these Medicare expansion plans or these additional plans to help you pay. Well, one thing that Trump doesn't like is the money we keep giving to insurance companies, whether it's through Obamacare, whether it's through these subsidies. So he wants the companies to lower the price as opposed to us buying down the higher prices. Now, the Wall Street Journal first reported on this. They say that the decision comes as the Trump administration pursues broader changes to government health programs, including a proposal to overhaul Medicare physician payments and increase oversight of federal healthcare spending. And for those doctors going, oh, I can't believe it, there's also the same amount of doctors going, it's about time somebody looks at the fraud. Because with all this waste, fraud, and abuse, it's screwing us over and it's screwing our patients over. So the agency says the national base beneficiary premium for Medicare Part D will be $41.33 next year. Annual increases in that premium remain capped at 6% through 2029 under provisions of the Inflation Reduction Act. CMS said it's going to release final 2027 Medicare Advantage and Part D premiums and plan details in September. So this is when, in the fall, is when people have the opportunity to purchase their extension plans or their Advantage plans or their Medicare Part C. I really believe, as I've said over and over and over again, there needs to be a complete overhaul. But Trump, when people say, well, this is going to screw everybody over, this is going to, one thing that Trump is doing, whether we're fans of it or not, and whether it pertains to Iran or Russia is he's looking at the long game. We don't want Iran to have a nuclear weapon. We don't want Iran to continue more and more decades of messing with Americans and messing with people and messing with Israel. I mean, Iran and them supporting Russia in the Russia-Ukraine war and their drone activity. And it's not a quick fix. I know we promised it to be a quick fix, but it's not a quick fix. But it's something that has to be done for the long term. Same thing with where we are with Obamacare and the Affordable Care Act and the premiums and the subsidies and it's a mess. And it didn't improve over time. It just got worse and worse and worse, because when you tell an insurance company that we are going to help subsidize the high premiums, then they'll keep raising the premiums. What incentive do they have to lower the prices? The only incentive for a company to lower their price is lack of demand. So, but if patients are like, but this is what I need, government, you step in, pay for it so I buy it, nothing's happening with the pricings. So, these insurance companies, they make money. I get they do deserve to make a profit. I also understand that the average senior may be on 20 different medications per month to stay alive. I get that. And that does cost insurance companies money. But the government subsidizing when it's a plan that is overpriced, not smart. And I would rather the money go to the patients. One thing Trump wants to do with Obamacare is, rather than give the money to the insurance companies, give the money to the patients. Have them set up these HSA accounts, and then they could use that to pay for their deductible or pay for their premiums or pay for... I like that better. Give it to give the power back to the people. But instead, the money's going to the insurance companies. And so our subsidies really have to be relooked at. And as I've said time and time again, please, for the love of the Lord, have a simple Medicare that covers both hospital, doctor visits, and nurse practitioner visits, and provider visits, and medications. None of this, well, you get Part A, but you don't get Part B, and you get this, you get this. No, absolutely ridiculous. It makes no sense. And having taken care of Medicare patients, seeing things not get covered like pre-op physical x-rays. What are you talking about? It was like, the patient needs to have surgery. The surgeon will not operate unless they've had a pre-op chest x-ray. But the Medicare wouldn't pay the chest x-ray. And these patients were paying out of their pockets. The system is a mess. So we'll see what happens. I know there's going to be a lot of criticism and back and forth with this, but we need to overall fix the system. And how do you fix the system? By telling these insurance companies they're not going to keep getting the gravy train. They're going to have to fight to get the buyer again. And that means lowering your prices. 1-877-DOC-DOLLY. Don't go away. Dr. Dahlia here. Are you tired, burned out, gaining weight, succumbing to the daily pressures of life? Well, how's your dopamine doing? How you feel right now, how you'll feel an hour from now, and how you'll feel next week is completely reliant on your dopamine. Our daily motivation and willingness to push through challenges depends on the intricate chemical process dopamine provides. Christian Kalikas and I created Deploying Dopamine, a book that tells you what dopamine is, when it dysfunctions, and how to successfully deploy it when needed. Find Deploying Dopamine on Amazon today. Check it out.
Carl Amari here to tell you about our newest website for old-time radio lovers. It's 100radioshows.com. At this site, there are 5 old-time radio shows waiting for you to download free as our gift to you, and be sure to browse the additional 700 old-time radio shows available to you for 70% off by using the promo code RADIO at checkout. This is a limited-time offer, so log on to 100radioshows.com. That's 100radioshows.com.
Hi, it's Mark Falter, host of the Financial Fitness Show. I strongly believe that no one should ever pay 1 penny more in taxes than they are legally obligated. Unfortunately, for most hardworking Americans, this just isn't the case. Why? Because most people spend more time planning next weekend's getaway than trying to ensure they're going to pay less in taxes. My financial fitness team has put together some materials that I know are going to help you. It's the Tax Savings Kit. Tax Savings Kit includes 3 things: free tax analysis, top 10 ways to pay less in taxes, and an investor's guide to taxes. Now, how do you get it? Simple. 866-764-2635. Again, 866-764-2635. I'm Mark Falter. This is Financial Fitness, making personal finance profitable.
Welcome back to the Dr. Dahlia Show, 1-877-Doc-Dolly, 1-877-DOCDALI. Big thanks to Talk Media Network for making the show happen. Big thanks to Daniel, our producer, and big thanks to y'all for tuning in. We really do appreciate it. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter or X at Dr. Dahlia, Facebook, The Dr. Dahlia Show, and on YouTube, click like and subscribe. So as we're going into the midterms and then 2028, we are going to be hearing student loan forgiveness plans again and again. Now, this is something that started to be brought up, I believe, in the 2016 Democratic primary, and I thought it was a bad idea. Well, now there's studies or a report showing that, yes, just even bringing it up was a bad idea and actually hurt borrowers. So my issues with the student loan plan was, okay, you're telling people to borrow money, either for their house or their car or student loans, but you're going to, or credit cards. So everybody's borrowing money, but you're going to randomly choose the student loans and write those off. What's next? Are you going to write off mortgages, car payments? And then what happens to the people that actually paid off their student loans? They're pretty mad. And you saw Democrats going up to Joe Biden going, that's not fair. I paid off my student loans, and now I have to help pay for somebody else's? Not to mention how many people skipped college because they couldn't borrow money, or they did community college, worked multiple part-time jobs, couldn't get the GPA to go to professional school so they could still support themselves. I mean, you have a lot of people going, wait a second, if the rules were going to change, I could have taken advantage of it. And then another issue I had with this promising of student loan debt was, what do you do if you're a student? Do you run out and borrow more because it sounds like it's going to be free money? Do you not pay off your student loans so you aren't one of these sorry people that paid off their student loans before all the discussions happened? Because nobody wants to be the person that could have gotten free money. So many students are like, I won't pay then, because why pay just for it to get written off? It sounds like it's going to get written off. It was so confusing. And Joe Biden thought he could get away with it. And Congress was like, no, this money is owed. It's a loan. You're setting a pretty bad precedence. I understand you want to buy votes. You want to buy college student votes, but you're also going to hurt. You're going to hurt a lot of us because many of our constituents paid off their student loans or skipped college altogether, or worked so much to get through that they couldn't get the Harvard or Yale entrance GPA. Well, this report out of Newsweek kind of agrees with what I and many people have felt. And they said that the millions of Americans who hope for student loan forgiveness under former President Joe Biden are now worse off financially. They say after waiting for debt relief that never arrived, borrowers experienced financial damage that could exceed 43% of the borrower's original loan balance in some cases. Now, this research comes from the National Bureau of Economic Research. The study found, according to Newsweek, that borrowers who expected their loans to be forgiven or believed pandemic-era payment pauses would continue reduced their monthly student loan payments and increased spending. So they were like, well, I don't have to pay off the student loans. This extra money I can now use for something else. No, that's why it was such a bad idea. Subsequently, these individuals are now even more behind, because now that money they spent, they're not putting into, they didn't work towards their student loans. According to Kevin Thompson, CEO of 9i Capital Group and the host of the 9 Innings podcast, told Newsweek, for some borrowers, these programs created a false sense of security. Many believed a significant portion of all of their student loans would eventually be forgiven, allowing them to spend money that otherwise would have gone towards repayment. So we still have students with high debt. They're continuing to struggle after repayment because during COVID, they said, okay, you guys don't have to pay your loans. But then after COVID died down, they kept that going on for years. And then they said, okay, everybody now has to start paying Well, that's almost like an AMR, like an ARM mortgage. It's almost like you're not putting that money as they should have. They should have put that money aside to start paying off their loans. Government promises, repayment policies, it influenced borrower behavior. They say now many are in worse shape. The NBER report looked at how borrowers responded to expectations about future debt relief. These were survey responses. They were optimistic that loan forgiveness would be approved. So what they did is they reduced their student loan payments by about $40 per month on average, and then increased non-durable spending by about $100 per month. Similarly, borrowers who expected additional extensions of the federal student loan payment pause also reduced their payments by about $40 per month. After repayments resumed, those borrowers were 7.5 percentage points more likely to become seriously delinquent on their loans. So Alex Bean, a financial literacy instructor at the University of Tennessee at Martin, said the research doesn't suggest that loan forgiveness itself harmed borrowers, but rather indicates the extended uncertainty surrounding the Biden administration's forgiveness initiatives, and the SAVE plan changed how many people manage their finances. Some borrowers delayed making payments or increased spending because they believed a portion of their debt might be ultimately forgiven. When the courts blocked parts of the plan, they were left with larger balances. So the researchers conclude that incorrect beliefs about future government policy created measurable financial harm, and the losses from those behaviors could exceed 43% of the borrower's student loan balance. So what Biden wanted to do was they did all these blanket promises. We're going to write off all the debt. No, we're not allowed to do that. So then he said, well, what about 10,000? We are going to write off 10,000 of it, and then up to 20,000 for Pell Grant initiatives. But the plan was struck down by the U.S. Supreme Court. You couldn't do it, not because the Supreme Court was against it. It's because Congress has to be the one to decide that. And I believe the Treasury. And so what are we teaching young students? I mean, college is supposed to be about getting them ready for real life. So if you are going to ask, if you don't have the money to go to college and you are going to ask to borrow it, just like if you don't have money for a home, if you don't have money for a car, when you sign on the dotted line that you are going to pay for it, that has always been an absolute. That's been very, very odd and crazy to think that some people and some loans don't matter. I also think it's completely ridiculous that it's the taxpayers paying and not the colleges. If the colleges are so for paying off student loan debt, why did you overcharge these students? You put the 10,000 back in. You write down their debt. No, they got the money from the government. So the colleges got rich, and now we have to pay off student loan debt. It's absolutely ridiculous, just ridiculous. But what are we teaching these kids? And now, I feel bad for them, because if I was their age, I probably would have been a little confused. Now, I didn't borrow for undergrad. I worked multiple part-time jobs. I didn't want to be in debt. For medical school, I borrowed, but I borrowed the bare minimum, and I waited tables while in medical school. Not easy. Not easy. And then I worked in residency because I was getting very little money. I worked as an ER doc and an urgent care doc on the side on the weekends. It was rough. If I would have known that I could have borrowed money that would be written off, I probably wouldn't have gone through all that. I am a workaholic. I probably would have done maybe 1 or 2 part-time jobs, but not 3. I mean, so if I was that age and somebody said, Dahlia, look, if you borrow, you might not have to pay it all back. So don't pay it back because then you're not going to get it back. Why don't you wait and see? Well, I would be really upset with these politicians promising things just to get my vote that they couldn't enact and do. And I know the Democrats are blaming the Republicans for this, but Democrats were unhappy with this as well because they paid off their student loans or they skipped college altogether or they went to community college and not a fancy schmancy Pepperdine because they didn't want to borrow the extra money. I mean, I've seen medical students borrow extra student loans so they could get a new car. I drove around in a Chevy Chevette with no air conditioning when I was in school. So I don't think it's very popular. And then what else are you going to write off? I mean, there's other people with bigger mortgages that need writing off. So I think it was a mess, and I really do feel bad for the college students. 1-877 Dr. Dolly, don't go away.
Looking for a gift that can actually help secure someone's future? It's Mark Falter's new book, Common Sense Income Strategies. It makes the perfect gift for that special someone in your life. Mark has helped thousands of hardworking Americans secure their financial future by using time-tested strategies that continue to create wealth, whether the market is up or down. Strategies that will make perfect sense once you take the time to read this powerful book. Common Sense Income Strategies brings to you what Mark has been teaching in person and talking about on the radio for decades. You've worked too long and too hard not to see the fruits of your labor. To learn how to receive your free copy, call 866-764-2635. That's 866-764-2635. Secure your future with Common Sense Income Strategies by Mark Falter. Again, to learn how to receive your free copy, call 866-764-2635. That's 866-764-2635.
Welcome back to the Dr. Dahlia Show. You know, one of my favorite movies of all times is Lord of the Rings. Favorite books, Lord of the Rings. I just love the hobbits, the elves, the orcs, all of that. And of course, Aragorn. Whew, big fan. I was a little shocked to hear what some of these actors got paid. Sean Astin, who played Samwise, has revealed that he only earned $75,000 per movie. He in total made about $250,000, even though the films grossed nearly $3 billion. He didn't make that much money. In fact, in an article from, let me see where I give credit where credit is due. In an interview with The Guardian, he said he was so unprepared for the disconnect between his global fame as Samwise Gamgee, but his actual earnings. $75,000 per film with no residuals. So he earned about $250,000, they said total for the trilogy. And he admitted that the low pay forced him to sell his home. Now he's more comfortable. I mean, he's done, multiple movies. I mean, he was a child actor. Everybody knows who he is. And this did give him fame and a lot of other options. But really? Now, Orlando Bloom. Orlando Bloom played Legolas. Again, one of my favorite characters in the trilogy. What did he get for all three movies? Less than Samwise. $175,000 total. Kate Blanchett, we don't know exactly how much she got, but she joked that she was paid in sandwiches. Elijah Wood described the arrangement as a gamble by New Line Cinema. They offered smaller pay in exchange for securing the cast and being a part of such a legacy movie. So that's kind of fascinating to me. I love looking at, what people made and who took advantage of being in that role, who didn't. Many of these people still have huge net worths. They did well. One of the actors that actually made the most was Andy Serkis. Andy Serkis, who is now making the follow-up movies, he was the one that played Spiegel. And I believe he secured $1 million. He played Gollum and he same thing. They all like Aragorn and Strider. They have multiple names, but he made about $1 million. And, I mean, he's gifted, and like I said, now he's doing the next Lord of the Rings movie. But everybody else didn't really seem to be making that much. I'm kind of really surprised by that. I look at these stars as human beings just like us. Some people get really, really lucky, and they're worth 20 million or 40 million or 200 million. And, when you look at Kate Blanchett and some of these other, Sean Bean, Viggo Mortensen, they were able to go on and make some pretty big money. And I don't think anybody is complaining, but it's just fascinating to me how little, they got. Now, I'm not as fascinated about the salaries as I am who was going to play these iconic roles. So the King of Gondor is Aragorn or Strider. Originally, it was Stuart Townsend. Stuart Townsend left to do the League of Extraordinary Medicine. Gentlemen, the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. And some rumors had it that Townsend still looked too young, and director Pete Jackson thought an older character was needed. So the 29-year-old, I guess, was let go before filming. 42-year-old Viggo Mortensen was given the part, but he was not considered until after they considered Daniel Day-Lewis, Russell Crowe to be Aragorn, Nicolas Cage, Vin Diesel. I thought that was pretty fascinating. For Gandalf, the role of Gandalf the Grey and then Gandalf the White was executed perfectly by Ian McKellen. But the part was originally offered to Sean Connery. Sean Connery also went to do League of Extraordinary Medicine. Christopher Plummer, Anthony Hopkins. Also, get this, David Bowie was considered for Gandalf. Patrick Stewart, Patrick McGoohan. Now, what about Frodo? Well, Frodo was played by Elijah Wood. I couldn't think of anybody else doing that. However, Jake Gyllenhaal was considered for the role. Now, Boromir was absolutely fantastic. I'm a huge Sean Bean fan. And Sean Bean played the Valiant War Boromir, also Ned Stark. But you know who else was considered for Boromir? Bruce Willis. Bruce Willis. Can you imagine that? Or Liam Neeson. Now, Arwen is the half-elf played by Liv Tyler. And prior to her being casted, they offered the role to Uma Thurman. Uma Thurman had to decline because she was pregnant at the time. I couldn't imagine an Uma Thurman Arwen. Definitely Liv Tyler. I think nailed it. Eowyn. Eowyn was the niece of Theoden and the second woman to fall in love with Aragorn. And then she also took down Nazgul, if you remember. No man can kill me, but I'm no man. So she ends up killing Nazgul. Miranda Otto got the part, but the role was offered to Alison Doody, who declined it because she was pregnant at the time. Kate Winslet and Uma Thurman was also offered the Eowyn. So the J.R.R. Tolkien's amazing novels and the trilogies and seeing, I mean, this, I think we're at the 25th year. Is this the 25th anniversary of the first Lord of the Rings? The first one of the trilogy. So you're going to be seeing a lot of Lord of the Rings news. But, going back to these stars and it's interesting because people will reach out to me asking how to get into media, how to get into show business, how to get into these parts. And you got to be really careful what you wish for. For Sean Astin to have to sell his house because they didn't pay him enough. Or when you hear of these actors, these childhood actors that were making, at the time, $10,000 an episode. You're like, wowee, that's huge for a kid. That money eventually gets spent, especially if you're going to a private school or you need a house with a gate or a guard. And I'm not saying we need to feel sorry for these people, but for those of you on the verge of going into something that might give you fame, you might want to rethink that. Yeah, the money runs out. You look at these people going, oh, they're rich. I mean, Gene Hackman. I'm still blown away that Gene Hackman, one of the greatest actors of all time, proliferative in so many movies, died. and nobody was there for weeks. Where was security? Where were housekeepers? Where were his staff? And his wife, dead as well. And you wonder, was there financial ruin? Was there something else going on? How can somebody that big in Hollywood not have somebody to identify that he is having issues or his wife is dying of hantavirus? So, it's a shame because these, I think actors make too much money, being paid millions upon millions of dollars to be in a role. Come on, man, really, that money could help so many people, but that's what the business does. That's what the business pays. But it's interesting to see how some of these cast members, we think they're just rich and loaded, and they are. I mean, Sean Astin, I think, is worth multiple millions of dollars now, but it doesn't mean, you get to, live the pretty life. That's why a lot of these actors end up producing their own shows or producing their own movies. Because the movie can't afford them. They need money, and they want to know they have skin in the game, or like royalties. But interesting nonetheless. 1-877-Doc-Dolly. Don't go away.
Hey guys, it's Clyde. We've had a lot of requests for Ground Zero merchandise, so we put together an online store with a big variety of high-quality items. I'm really excited to let you know about these things. We have a lot to offer you and your loved ones. In addition to our regular apparel, such as t-shirts, beanies, hoodies, and hats, we've expanded our product line with posters, flags, aprons, mugs, and a whole lot more. We also have Ground Zero collectibles along with a limited edition of items like a Clyde Lewis canvas portrait, a Ground Zero embroidered jacket that will certainly make for great gifts and for interesting conversations with family and friends. And we now offer publications such as Ron Patton's book about mind control, MK Zine, and back copies of the official magazine of Ground Zero while it was in print. Paranoia, the Conspiracy Reader, also coming in 2023, are updated and revised books that I've written. There's a secure and easy-to-use shopping cart for your purchases. So shop today at our official store by going to groundzeromerch.com. Again, that's groundzeromerch.com.
Hey, America. How tired are you of mainstream corporate media's biased narratives and manipulated news? Their dishonesty and attempts to influence this generation have been exposed, put on display for anyone who's even half paying attention. But the New American Magazine has been an honest source of news and commentary for over 50 years. This is your opportunity to receive the stalwart of principled journalism at a deep discount. Picture a beautifully published magazine arriving at your doorstep twice a month, packed with insightful stories written with integrity. It's also available digitally on the New American's mobile app. Get up to speed with intelligent coverage from a freedom perspective. Right now, for a limited time, the New American is available to radio listeners at a 25% discount on a new subscription. Visit thenewamerican.com/radio25 and receive 25% off. Subscribe today at thenewamerican.com/radio25.
Welcome back to the Dr. Dolly Show, 1-877-Dr. 1-877-DOCDALI. So a few weeks ago when the World Cup was coming, people were criticizing the CDC, the FDA, the Trump administration, saying, oh, this is going to be a hotbed for COVID. There's going to be infectious disease everywhere. This is going to be a hot mess. And Trump's policies are going to cause Armageddon. Well, thank God, knock on wood, as we predicted, everything was going to be fine. But as a doctor, I am intrigued. You had people partying it up. I was in New York City, Times Square. People face to face, hanging out, not sleeping, drinking like crazy, large crowds. A lot of stuff could have happened. not only from a health standpoint, but also from a violence standpoint. Shooting and thank God, none of that happened. I mean, I know it's been a couple weeks, but let's just give our first responders, our government, our local governments, a big round of applause for keeping our World Cup visitors and attendees and players and staff pretty safe. I'm pretty impressed. 11 American cities hosted 39 teams and 78 matches, according to Fox News. And the CDC operated largely behind the scenes to detect emerging threats and to respond to public health awareness. According to CDC Director Dr. Jay Bhattacharya, he said readiness is not only measured by how we respond to emergencies, but by the work we do every day to prevent them. So the players on the pitch or the field, I call it the field, but I know, and everywhere else they call it the pitch. Players on the pitch were okay. The fans all over the world. When you have Ebola, when you have Zika, when you have, there's all sorts of things out there. We don't really hear, thank God, of a lot of outbreaks. And this news is coming out now because you know how a lot of incubation periods could be a week, 2 weeks. The World Cup has now been over for a few weeks. And I knocking on wood, but I haven't heard of any major medical calamity or any other calamity. So pretty interesting. So what did they do? So in total, the FIFA World Cup hosted 48 teams across 16 cities in the U.S., Canada, and Mexico. Over 5 million tickets were sold, and an estimated 6.5 million fans from around the world converged in the 3 host countries. Even though 5 million tickets were sold, 1.5 million maybe got free tickets. I don't know. They brought their germs, passion, enthusiasm, but I don't think we had many issues with the germs. There's suspicions that when you are in large crowds, you could spread infectious disease. But what experts were doing, rather than swabbing everybody, they were looking at their wastewater. And they were looking at upticks in hospital visits, social media for any signs of an outbreak. Now, one concern was measles. But measles has been surging for a while, especially after the COVID vaccines, when parents all across the globe are like, no, I'm done with all vaccines. So I don't want to say that the measles necessarily, had its first surge. We've been seeing measles surge already for a while. I wouldn't be surprised if there were a few more measles cases, but I do not believe the FIFA World Cup caused more clusters. All right. I am, though, going to be looking at that. But they say the CDC's effort included a World Cup data dashboard that provided health departments with real-time data, according to Fox News, on disease trends across multiple cities. As fans and teams traveled throughout the tournament, there was round-the-clock operations at ports of entry. In coordination with U.S. Customs and Border Protection, they monitored international passengers. So they looked at disease surveillance, laboratory capacity, wastewater surveillance, preparedness planning. And then they coordinated across a broad network, including multiple CDC divisions, Department of Health and Human Services, Administration for Strategic Preparedness and Response, and the White House FIFA World Cup Task Force. They say in March, the CDC released guidance telling health officials what to do, gave them a framework for preparing for a broad range of threats, biological, chemical, radiologic, nuclear, environmental, and, of course, to prepare for mass casualty events. And thank God, we were pretty good. The guidance encouraged every jurisdiction to approach the tournament through a risk-based lens, recognize that travel between venues connects communities far beyond host cities. So while we're watching the games, the government was working. And I really credit the Trump administration for not being lazy. They are on it. I was pretty impressed. And we have had outbreaks during this. Look at what happened with the Zika outbreak during the Rio Olympics. Zika can be spread not only by mosquitoes, but if you get it and you have sex with somebody, you could give them Zika. And Zika was causing babies to be born with anencephaly, no brain, or misshapen head and brain, and it was dangerous. Now, I'm not saying that the Olympics where there was the cause of it. I believe it started before the Olympics, but that was something that scared a lot of people. In fact, and a lot of Olympians didn't go to compete because they were so concerned. We have this big, huge Ebola outbreak, faster than the one from the 2014 to 2016 outbreak. Thank God, no Ebola cases. COVID, still out there. We've been doing pretty well with that. The cyclospora, somebody had asked, do I think that the cyclospora cases were triggered at the World Cup? With that it is a variable that should be considered. But we always have cyclosporiasis. Every summer we have cases of that. This we have more of, and there's a couple different outbreaks. One they believe is linked to the iceberg lettuce that might be used in tacos and things like that. Taco Bell voluntarily stopped using it just to play it safe. I know now there's multiple lawsuits when people say that, a restaurant gave them a parasite. But one thing about the cyclosporiasis is you can't give it to your family member. You can't give it to the person sitting next to you at the game. You would have had to eat something that was infected and contaminated and then get it. So yes, in theory, we could see more cases because the World Cup had so many people. But as I said, we see that every year. So the work is still going on. There's still preparedness, surveillance, partnerships, not to mention if we did such a good job, then that's going to be the game plan for future sporting events and World Cups. So, nobody talks about this. Nobody talks about all that work that happens behind the scenes. And it's pretty darn impressive. I'm impressed. More people should have gotten sick. More people should have gotten something. I credit Japanese fans. Japanese fans were bringing these blue bags so they could wave them during the soccer game. And then they took the blue bags and used them to clean up all their trash. Pretty darn respectful. That was nice. Not leaving a bunch of trash. I got to admit, though, I think soccer games are shorter than football games. Some of these soccer games ended before 3 hours, whereas football games usually last over 3 hours. That was even with overtime. So you could say there was, less exposure. It could also be that the drinks and the food and the concessions were so damn expensive that people said, I'm not going to be buying food. So maybe many of them didn't eat. A lot of them were drinking. The alcohol probably killed a lot of any bugs or pathogens. So, I believe we're going to hear a little bit more about the success we had with that. But for those people immunocompromised that are concerned about, I don't want to get myself sick. I don't want to get myself into trouble. Yeah, we do recommend avoiding crowds if you think you're going to be susceptible. 1-877-DOC-DOLLY. Don't go away.
Looking for an easy read that can actually help secure someone's future? Pick up a copy of Mark Falter's book, Common Sense Income Strategies. For the past 30-plus years, Mark has helped thousands of hardworking Americans secure their financial future by using strategies that continue to create wealth, whether the market is up or down. Strategies that will make perfect sense once you take the time to read this powerful book. Common Sense Income Strategies brings to you what Mark has been teaching in person and talking about on the radio for decades. It's not rocket science, it's a pretty easy read. You've worked too long and too hard not to see the fruits of your labor. Common Sense Income Strategies is available now on Amazon or by calling 866-764-2635. That's 866-764-2635. Common Sense Income Strategies by Financial Fitness Show host Mark Falter. Secure your financial future today.